Hi guys, welcome to the video. This time we're going to look at generating design ideas, which is the third section of your NEA. So in previous videos we've looked at Assessment Objective 1, Section A and Section B. In this video we're going to start Assessment Objective 2, Section C, as I said, is your third section, and we're looking at generating design ideas, which is out of 20 marks. Now this used to be called Initial Ideas. It's changed a little bit. Because obviously it's no longer the old GCSE, it's now the new NEA. So there are a little bit more marks up for grabs for this section. So let's jump into the mark scheme so we can see what is expected of you from both me and the exam board. Now you can see there are different marking bands. So we've got, say, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, 16 to 20. Again, there are other mark bands below this. However, there's no point me showing you them because we're not going to aim for them anyway. There are 4 different sort of elements of this section, and we're going to go through them a little bit more individually in a second. But before I do that, I just want to show you the difference between, say, 16 to 20 marks and 6 to 10 marks. So let's just take the very first element. So that it starts off with imaginative, creative and innovative ideas have been generated. As in, have you come up with some really cool, unique, fresh, new ideas for your design problem? Now, if you go down to 6 to 10 marks, you can see the only word that arrives there is imaginative ideas have been generated. So really, we're missing the creative and innovative. So again, how creative you've been and how new and unique and fresh your ideas are what is going to distinguish you between the, say, middle band and the top band. So let's get into what is actually expected of you. So let's focus on the very top mark band of 16 to 20 marks. So as I said previously, there are 4 elements of this mark band and the area that you need to focus on. So we've got imaginative, creative and innovative ideas. So again, I'm looking for, or rather you should be looking for, a range of different, fresh and new ideas that you can generate to solve your problem. We're also looking for avoiding design fixation. So design fixation is kind of like having all your ideas that are very similar. So it kind of means that if you've got, say, a bird feeder and you're doing very cuboid designs, if you've come up with 8 cuboid-based designs, they're going to be very similar in what they look like and how they work in terms of functionality. In which case, that's going to be design fixation. Have you been fixated upon one design rather than really casting your net nice and wide and come up with a range of different ideas? So again, you need to be looking for those fresh, new, innovative, unique ideas that are very wide-ranging. That's how you're going to complete that first element. Now, the second element talks about the ongoing investigation, as in research. So if you've come up with a new product, let's say a lamp, have you got some sort of research to talk about which light fitting you're going to use or what bulb you're going to use? That's all elements that you need to be using in order to come up with these decent, high quality designs that are both realistic and innovative. Then the third element is talking about communication. Now, a lot of people sit there and go, they really can't draw. They really have this idea that they're fixated. They cannot draw. Therefore, they're going to not get good marks in this area. And I need to be very clear. It is important to be able to communicate your ideas well, as in be able to draw to a good standard, but we're not looking for artistic levels of design. We're looking for good communication. We're looking also for a range of techniques. So that could be 3D sketches, 2D sketches, some CAD, some tangible models, maybe like a card or plasticine. Could it be some photographs if you're drawing inspiration from something? Let's say like you're doing some piece based upon architecture. Have you got a photo of whatever building or bridge or whatever it is you're using in terms of architecture that you've sketched over? Using that range of techniques to communicate your ideas is what is going to get you really good marks. And finally, different design strategies, again, is kind of like using that range of techniques in order to put yourself across the best communicative methods as possible. So, what does a page look like? Now, again, this is very different based upon what your own style is. I'm going to show you something that I've completed for a previous project. you could do something very different, and we're going to talk about that now. So this is, say, one of many pages of design ideas for a bird feeder project that we've run before. Now, again, when I look at it straight away, the thing I want to highlight initially is the use of colour. I've used a bit of a pro marker to outline in blue the design idea. That is simply so that the design idea is the first thing that you look at. Again, if I'm going to go back to the mark scheme, I'm focused on this communication idea, thinking, right, how am I going to communicate this idea or this page really well? Well, obviously, I want the ideas to stand out most of all. So I've used colour only on the ideas. You'll notice I've also got sketches about construction, and I've got annotations. I've labelled up my design ideas, and I've got this thing called a spec, where I've reviewed my ideas against my specification as I'm going along. Now, when you're coming up with your ideas, you could see I've got a wide range of ideas there. Now, obviously, it may not necessarily be wide because there's only 4 ideas there. If I had another 2 pages that were similar to this, then I'd be looking at a wide range then. You're not really going to come up with the best idea after 2 or 3 drawings. You need to be coming up with, I suggest, the minimum of 6 ideas. Now that needs to be taken with a pinch of salt because there is no set amount of ideas for you to complete. It all depends on, again, if I go back to the mark scheme, have you avoided design fixation in order to come up with that wide range of ideas using extensive experimentation? Basically, have you come up with a wide range of ideas that are very different from each other, that are communicated really well? So if I was being really critical, I'd argue maybe design idea 1 and design idea 3 are very similar in the sense of they're very tall cuboid designs. Obviously, I think I'd get away with it on this page because they are very different. Design idea 1 has 4 sides of grill for the birds to access the bird feed, whereas design idea 3 has 2 opposite sides, and then the other 2 opposite sides, or the adjacent sides, are engraved with some sort of pattern or design that I've decided to draw on. So arguably they're different enough. Things to note, like I said, is the colour on this page, but also the spec review. Now, I need to be reviewing my ideas as I'm going along because obviously I might come up with an idea, I might sketch it down very quickly, but the trouble is I might not actually produce a decent idea because it might not fulfill my specification very well. If it doesn't fulfill your specification very well, that's okay. You can still put the idea down, but obviously be aware that that probably isn't going to be the one you're going to need to take forward to develop it later on. You can see I've also got functionality, so I've got things in terms of how it's actually going to work, how am I going to construct it around the outside. So again, going back to the mark scheme, I'm ticking off that functionality area. So, again, I'm making sure I'm ticking off the mark scheme as I'm going along. You can see my annotations. Now, annotations are a little bit different. Everyone will produce something that looks a bit different. Me, personally, I'm not a fan of typed annotations. It just doesn't make sense to me that you'd be sat with your clients coming up with these ideas, and then you'd have to tell your clients to stop. You then have to scan in a picture, go type up some comments on the computer. That just doesn't make sense to me. It's not how the world works. So I much prefer handwritten annotations. The other reason why I prefer handwriting annotations is because that it doesn't detract your eye from the idea itself. We're not playing Pictionary here. I shouldn't need to sort of read writing in order to figure out what the design is or how it works. That should be evident. I should be able to see that from just looking at the design. So if I take design idea 3, I can see, look, it's got various pieces of wood here. I've got the grill here. I can figure that out. I've got obviously a finger joint. That's how I'm going to construct it. I've got complementary annotations. So here, for example, I'm talking about laser engraving a design on the side. Rather than that just being painted on or something. So I am talking about technicalities now. I'm using a laser cutter to engrave on the side. It's made from pine, which is a softwood. It's going to be PVA'd together using the finger joint. So again, I'm being technical to explain my functionality and construction, but they are complementary annotations. They are not writing paragraphs explaining what the idea is. The best way I can kind of put that in a very sort of simple manner is if that design is coloured blue or painted blue, if you labelled up an arrow next to it that said blue, then that's labelling, that's not annotation, that's not going to get you any marks whatsoever. I can see it's blue because the way you've coloured it in or you've rendered it. It's pointless me adding that annotation there. So your annotations are there to help complement the design in order to get across the functionality, the aesthetics, and the innovation of your design. So again, you could present your page like this, where I've got 4 ideas on a page. Equally, you can go the complete opposite and do something like this, where you've got 1 idea per page. So again, if I'm taking this idea, design idea 2, and I'm copying it over onto a separate page, you can see it gives me a lot more space around the outside to add annotations and what I like to call satellite sketches. You can see, look, I'm talking about potential improvements. So perhaps rather than a curved top here, it could be a flat bottom or a flat top. I'm talking about how, like here, for example, how the lid is actually going to use a hinge, and I've drawn a hinge, look, and I've used arrows to show that that's going to lift open. The thing that's missing is the actual annotation on this page, of course, because I'm not going in to explain now. That's where the bird feed would go. You'd pour it in, etc. On this side, I'm talking about material usage. So I'm trying to explain here that if I had a curve on top, that means that all this remaining wood becomes scrap because I can't really use it. It's not usable again. Whereas if I kept it as a square, as a rectangle in this case, this extra scrap bit here, I could reuse on another element of the design because it's a good shape for me to reuse. So I'm talking about the material usage there and the sustainability of my design. The other thing on this side here is the different hanging methods. So if I was going to go back to the mark scheme again very quickly, this ongoing investigation, what I've got here is an opportunity to do a bit of research around which is the best method to hang this wall-mounted bird feeder to the wall. So I could, like I've got here on the actual design, just have 2 holes that you could screw into using a raw plug in the wall if it's a masonry wall, or screwing straight into a timber cladding if it's on timber cladding, for example. I could have 2 eyelid screws here with a bit of string or chain that holds it up, and you just have it hanging from a hook or a screw. I've got kind of like a bracket that would go on the wall here. So again, I'm showing my research there, or I would have the opportunity now around the outside. So in this space here, I could add some research there to explain which is the best method to hang up my bird feeder. So there's 2 very different methods there of producing your ideas. I've got 4 on a page and I've got 1 on a page. Again, there is no right and wrong way of doing this. So long as I said, you are showing you've got imaginative, creative and innovative ideas, you're avoiding this design fixation, you're explaining using annotations and satellite sketches the functionality, aesthetics and innovation, you're doing any ongoing investigation if it's relevant, okay, and focused. So again, if I go back here, there's no point me doing this unless it's relevant. There's no point me doing research for the sake of research. I need to do the research if it's going to help me improve my design. I'm communicating myself very well, and that could be through my handwriting, through my 2D, my 3D, my CAD, my models, my photographs of architecture or whatever. Whatever it is I'm going to use a wide range of techniques that is communicated well, and my design strategies allow me to come up with a decent or integrated approach to the design. So if I was being really critical of this mark scheme against this, I would say although this page has some very good features, it doesn't necessarily fulfill the mark scheme. And let me explain why. So yes, my ideas are imaginative and they're creative and they are innovative. And I've explained the functionality and the aesthetics and innovation. However, have I got any ongoing investigation, or even have I referred back to my research in my annotations? When as I quick scan the annotations that I've written, I don't think I have. Perhaps some Danish oil coat to protect the wood would only be relevant if I've done some, say, material or material finish research. If I haven't, that's kind of irrelevant annotation to add. So maybe I could add some research there. Also, have I got 2D and 3D? So if I go back here, I mean, I've got some 2D here and I've got some 3D, but have I got maybe CAD or photographs on there? Is it a wide range of techniques? Well, on this page alone, I don't think I have got a wide range of techniques, so maybe I'll be limiting my marks again. And finally, have I got, good communication? So when I look at this design idea 1, do I know, for example, is that wall hanging? Is it hanging from a tree on a string? Is it supposed to sit on a table? How do I fill it up? If ultimately I've got to refill this with birdseed, how am I going to do that? I haven't really explained that on that design. Therefore, I don't think that I've communicated that idea very well. So again, although the design and the sketch might be really good, you need to communicate the whole design in terms of functionality, what it's supposed to do, how it's going to work, as well as just producing a pretty sketch. So again, the mark scheme is very specific here, asking you to do certain things. So although that page looks really good, personally, I think I'm not going to be in this 16 to 20 marks. I think I'm going to be in the 11 to 15 because the page does look nice. It is well communicated, or it's got a good communication level to it. But there are elements missing that I think I could add in order to boost it to the 16 to 20 marks. And obviously, this is just one page of ideas. I'd probably have another 2 or 3 pages of similar sort of quality and similar sort of standard to back up the rest of this mark scheme. So in terms of what you need to do, you need to produce a range of ideas. Now in brackets I've put 4 to 8. That's, for me, is kind of like 4 to 8 decent quality ideas. You may come up with like 16 ideas, and that's fine. It all depends on what your product is and what your design problem is. Add annotations to them, focusing on functionality, material usage, manufacturing, assembly, all that sort of stuff. Get that communication up there. Now, I strongly recommend adding some client feedback. There's no point in adding or designing something unless you're going to speak to your client about it. So once you come up with an idea, ask your client what they think about it. Do they like certain bits? Do they not like certain bits? What bits could be improved, etc., etc. Again, including ongoing research if you think it's necessary, and 3D and 2D sketches, and obviously some CAD if it's suitable and you're able to do that. But most importantly, you're being marked on the communication, so make sure, yes, your ideas have to be a good standard. They don't have to be amazing, but they have to be a good standard. And also your annotations have to be legible. No itchy, scratchy drawing or scratchy sort of handwriting. Make sure it is legible. So again, in order to succeed in this section, you need to come up with a range of ideas to fulfill your design problem that avoids design fixation. You're communicating it well, focusing on functionality and aesthetics, making sure you've got client feedback in there, and hopefully you're reviewing it against your specification to make sure it's a successful